Greetings. So tonight, I'm just recording a quick video before getting on to some other things. Um, East asked me to. He said, "What options do you use in your games?" Now I did do a thing on the variants or the quest variant, and I talked about some of this there. But I did go through because that's a good question. I was like, that's a good question. What options do I use? My wild guess is it's just some amalgam of things misremembered from first edition, uh, things read incorrectly from third edition, and a couple options which I probably do mostly wrong. But I went through and I read all the optional rules and advanced ones to go and say, okay, what the hell do I actually use? And let's make a list, right? So I decided I like lists. Um, so I decided to make a list, and I have some highfalutin graphics, of course. So the first one is obviously, and here's literally, I mean, wow, that is some hardcore special effects right there. Um, So, I mean, first obviously is the quest card variant that I use in my games. We forgo standard victory conditions. We use the cards, and I we do allow you to score fame and notoriety, which is prowess, gold, spells, etc. Right? And you've seen that if you've watched any of the videos. There is a GitHub with the Magic Realm stuff in there where there's a Word doc for you if you ever were interested in what the hell is that mess that he's playing. So that's the first one is the quest card variant. A lot of things really come down to what makes the most fun playing in that variant. Um, since it does change the game quite a bit, I don't quite worry about that. Ooh, the difficulty of Magic Realm. I know a lot of folks are sort of purists and they like, oh, Magic Realm is difficult and it can turn on you in a heartbeat and so on and so forth. And I'm like, whatever, right? We can make characters a little more powerful and so on. They're racing anyway. It's really a race against each other and a race against the clock. Um, to do what they can, given this changing board and victory conditions that change along the way. So I don't necessarily. Some of these things you might go, well, that makes the game easier or whatever, and the answer is, yeah, it sort of does in terms of just life or death, 100%. But it doesn't to meet your victory conditions because they've changed somewhat. So the first thing to that end is I do use serious wound. If you get hit with an attack which equals your vulnerability and is not greater than, you roll two dice, you take that many wounds. Done. Could be one. 1 in 36 chance it's one. Obviously, a 30% chance it's six. Um, there's reasons for that. One is, frankly, it's, when I'm playing multiplayer with actual folks, not super fun to get them killed. Usually it's these are people that are new or they don't play Magic Realm very much. So I find that that's a nice way to just make sure people stay in the game typically a little longer. Second, when playing alone for heroes, it's not fun to have characters die either, really. Um, it also, I think, evens the playing field a little bit for light characters who otherwise would be killed. There is no attack they could take, right? Especially there's a survivor card, which is get wounded, and then go tell your tale at the end. So light characters would absolutely never be able to touch that card because they'd be dead by any attack. So this allows them at least to, and there's ways to get wounded, but this is a way to allow them to wound. Um, so serious wounds is definitely one that's a winner in my book. Um, oops. There you go. I'm adding extra lines in my document. Ambushes. We do definitely do ambushes. So let's do plural. Ambushes. So we allow missile characters and spellcasters to possibly cast, and if they cast a single target or they're shooting a bow against one target, they can roll to stay hidden every time they target someone. Um, I feel I feel this gives ambush archers, the elf and the woods girl, a nice chance to actually be warriors in their own right. If you're a fighter, then you have the advantage of you have a fairly known list of possible probabilities, right? Oh, I am the White Knight with a Morning Star. I know that the Tremendous Troll, if I am hidden, is an auto kill. Done. You have zero, uncertainty about that. Whereas if you're a bow, a character, you're like, well, tremendous armored. I have a 1 in 6 chance of possibly killing that. And then if I don't, I have to run, right? With ambushes, at least, there is uncertainty. And the uncertainty, but it is mitigated by the fact that you could be hidden and then you could remain hidden. And so I feel that that's an interesting trade off between, say, melee fighters who have a lot more danger in fighting, those fights they don't know, right? Those middle ground fights. But the ones they know are just instant. I feel this is a good trade off for that. That archers, they get uncertainty. They don't know if they can kill this thing, but they know they'll be able to remain hidden. They might get 2, 3, 4 shots at it before trying it. So, if you didn't do that, then the archers, the ambush archers, the woods girl, and the elf, they just don't fight much. They run a lot. This way, they're sort of warriors in their own right. They have a different paradigm than the meleeers, and I like that. I like the fact that it adds two badass warriors to the deck of characters. And so I feel that that's a huge deal. Plus, I do think that it allows certain spell cast combinations. There's certain mage spell combinations that are like, I gotta cast poison on my guy, and how am I gonna do that if as soon as I do anything, I become unhidden because then I'm gonna have three dudes on me. So I like the fact that it sort of allows spellcasters and light characters more options in how they deal with more monsters because I think having more options for more characters is always a good thing. Um, Here's one that I don't use, but I really should. It's fly activities. And this is just activites. Do you allow peers? What is it? Peer and something else. Do you allow peering from air? You know what? That sounds reasonable. Peer and alert and enhanced peer. Sure, sounds reasonable to me. Let's do that one. So I think I'm going to use that one in the future. But we don't fly that often. Um, but that could allow for certain really cool things, right? So you could, for instance, the witch, if she's an absorb build, then the witch could use broomstick, fly around. Oh, there's a monster. You know what? Before I land, possibly in the clearing of the tremendous troll, I'm going to alert a black to pop him with absorb, maybe. So I see nothing wrong with that. The woods girl, she could be flying a bat after day 7. Day 8 comes, flies around. Oh, let me alert my bow. Just in case I land in that guy's clearing. But again, don't do it that often, and then so optional character abilities. And this is 100%. We use all of them but the elf, effectively. I don't penalize the elf. Um, Again, I don't think that I think that these make all the characters have more options, except for the elf and the knights, of course, get actually penalized. And I can actually see the knights getting penalized because both the knights not only have strong allies, but they both have things that alter their meeting rooms. So, you know, uh, giving the white knight, who's already powerful, the order as an ally and -1 to all meeting rolls would mean you would never roll out of that chapel before you picked up an order, a knight with you. I think. Um, but otherwise, all the abilities, I think, I do. I also so all the abilities, right? Of all the character abilities, we definitely use the captains. The druids, we actually don't. We used to use the druids where the sight chits don't summon monsters. we have sort of come off of that somewhat, just to because though I don't think it's OP, it does make the druids game super boring. um, so, in just in the interest of having some threat and danger in druid games, we have the druid does call sight, but we did make him immune to curses, so that means that he can go after a lot of that. I think those are all good. The magician, without the ability to keep those alert chits, I think that's a good one for him too. He keeps the alert chits even if he alerts. Um, the wizard needs that M2 chit. It opens up his spell casting abilities a great deal. The woods girl, who I have been told many times is OP anyway, and indeed she is the best ambush archer in the game for certain. But I like how I simply like having her have more options and more clearings, right? What that means is that you're not just relying on the deep woods. If there's a treasure site, loot ability is useless because there's nothing there. So you might find something in the borderland, for instance, or in the ledges, um, the cliff, that you can loot a little easier, and so I just feel that makes uh, makes her a gives her more area to play with, and I'm all for it because again, I mean, I think I'm not worried about making a character stronger or weaker as much as I want them all to have a large set of things they can do in as much of the board as they can, because the quest game requires them to traverse the board. You cannot set up your own game like you can with the victory conditions, and maybe I like that, but some would consider it a flaw, and I would see why with the quest cards. But the quest cards force you to go different places, right? That you might not otherwise go. Um, and so, giving all the characters all the abilities they possibly can have, I'm all for it. Uh, and you want to keep them vaguely balanced. I don't think they're poorly balanced. So I do use optional abilities pretty much all, but like I said, I don't penalize the elf. The druid doesn't get his sight chits. Otherwise we use them all. Um, this is the one. This is the one I think that caused the question. Benevolent spells. I do use benevolent spells. I think it makes sense. We have a lot of buff spells, right? So we added a bunch of spells. Right? I took spells from expansion one, and I took spells from uh, 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 Realm Speak, and I made a couple up, and and so we got spells from all over. Again, I don't think any of them are super powered. You know, um, I think they're all great for certain characters at certain times, for sure. But there's buffs in there, and if you can't cast on your boys that are going to the fight with you, I think that really limits that. So I think benevolent spells is super necessary for things like the magician poison thing that we just saw. That build that was awesome. You turn Rogue 7 into a tough fighter, a badass. Um, and that's great. That is great. That is right. I think if you're burning a spell choice, you should be able to be a badass. Like that's the point. So benevolent spells helps that, and so I definitely use benevolent spells. Now, one thing that I thought, oh, that sounds great. What is it? Enhanced. But I actually don't use this. Strangely enough, and I'm not sure why I don't use it. Um, and maybe I should, and I think I will, is enhance artifacts and spell books, right? So the way we have always played is if you get an artifact or spell book, you can use it to cast those spells that you've awakened in there. So it is a chit, a time zero chit that can cast this spell that's in there, right? Um, and that's it. That's the rules. With enhanced artifacts spell books, you can cast. I mean, it's just a magic chit now, and you can use it to do all the things a magic chit can do. And so I'm not 1,000% sure how. I feel about that. I think I should definitely try it. It makes every artifact now a huge deal for, I mean, aside from the Sacred Grail, but it makes every artifact, and the good book has type 7 though. I think every artifact becomes awesome for the magician all of a sudden. Um, I'm not 1,000% sure how I feel about using it to then learn other spells. I don't know. Again, good question, right? I think that opens up the spell game, and so definitely something to consider and think about. So I'm going to put question mark, but I've run out of space. So I'm going to put enhanced artifacts like that. So there you go. So now I'm thinking about it. One I do not use at all. I do not use. What is it? Enhanced magic, right? I don't actually use. I'm looking over here. Sorry. I don't use enhanced magic. I've thought about this for a long time because I was back and forth on this a great deal. I'm a giant fan, right? So if you're a character and you get two spells or three spells, I hate the idea that if you take spell X, you really need spell Y to make it work, or else it doesn't quite work. I'm not a big fan of that. I never liked that. I never liked the idea of, well, if I take transform, I better take remedy, or if I take absorb, I better take remedy. Always felt there was a little bit of a a mess. I mean, you're already all spells are configurable special powers, pretty much. And a lot of these spellcasters, you even see it. These special abilities they get, all they do is mitigate the inherent penalty of having to burn spell chits to use your special powers. That's really what it is. If you think about it in Magic Realm, if you are the elf and you take your two type 3 spells, now the elf doesn't get this because he's also half warrior, right? He also is a great bowman and hide. So he doesn't count. Let's skip him. You know what? He needs to be nerfed. I go back up to the optional character abilities and nerf that bastard. Um, but if you look at the sorcerer, right? The sorcerer, it's like, well, you get a bonus to lore and you get a extra spell phase. And the answer is all that does is slightly mitigate the fact that to use the special abilities you've picked, you burn two chits every time you do it. And so you have to rest those two chits. So that's two rest phases. You need to do a spell X and a spell to get. So it's four phases every time you use your special ability. Two rests, a spell X, and a spell. Now, one of those is free, so it's only three phases every time you use your special ability. Um, I'm not opposed to that. They are configurable special abilities, so maybe they should be weaker or more penalized. I shouldn't say weaker; they're not weaker. They should be penalized a little bit, right? And that's fine. But I always hate the idea that, well, I got to do this special ability and you have to take another, you have to pick this other thing to make this one work, right? And again, it's mostly absorb and transform and remedy are the two big ones. Um, so I thought, well, enhance magic's the way. But then ultimately, what happens is, that just that's what you do. You just like absorb, 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 absorb. There's then it takes all the thought away from that, right? Now, again, if you're the witch, you'd have to probably be hidden 9 times out of 10 to cast your absorb or whatever. But if it doesn't tie anything up, then all those permanent spells do. I mean, then it's just an attack spell that always hits effectively, right? Um, and there are those. The Witch King has Drain Life at time two, always hits typically. So I mean, it's not unsimilar. But I suppose I got over the enhanced magic. I said, I would ultimately like the ability to turn off a permanent spell at some point. Having meld into mist and then just permanently having it on, and then going, can you turn that off? Or I don't know. So that's a really long and rambling way of saying I thought about enhanced magic a great deal to avoid having to say take remedy if you wanted to do an absorb build and have multiple options of the absorb. But I got over that. So when people take the witch, my son, my oldest son, who we came over and we played, and he took the witch, and I said, look, you can either take remedy, and that's two of your spell choices, which sucks, but then that gives you the ability to play fast and loose with this absorb, or you don't take it, and then you cannot play fast and loose with this. You have to be very deliberate when you use it, and he was, and he got the tremendous dragon. So screw him. He. um. So I don't use enhanced magic. I thought about this a great deal, and I do not deliberately do not use it. You tie up chits when you cast those spells, and that is the choice there. I do like it. I might consider the enhanced artifacts though. This is simply probably started as a um this probably started as a misreading of the rules and it just stuck. So um so I mean character power of the pit I don't care about. It's just a spell. It goes off. It nukes everything in the I mean, it nukes whatever. But demon power of the pits have to hit. They're a time two attack or a time three attack. They hit like normal. They can miss. If the demon hits you, it turns over and it has your clutches. And after power of the pit you, imagine doing some tentacles of hell thing which go out and grab you. And if you're not just burned to death by the tentacles, it lures you in and then devours you or whatever. Whatever it does. But they have to hit. I know Power of the Pit has to hit in here, and it does works for the character too. The simple fact is that most of my games, since I'm not doing a bunch of PvP, I actually don't use Power of the Pit much, so it doesn't matter. But the Demon Power of the Pit has to hit. That's just sort of how we've always played it, and how we play it today. And the character Power of the Pit doesn't. It's just a spell. Um, but the demon power of the pit can't be interrupted or anything. I mean, it's an attack again. So I think we're doing that wrong. But that's always how I've done it and how we've done it, and it's just stuck like that. And yeah, and that's it. And I don't see any reason to change it because I think it works. I'm gonna put a couple more on here. I don't use the weather and seasons, and part of the reason is that I don't like how sweeping and gigantic it is, if that makes sense. Um, it either just, oh, the board is harder to move around, the board is easier to move. Okay, I mean, okay. I actually like the fact that you're getting 28 days and four phases a day for the most part. Good luck with that, right? Um, I did try to capture the spirit of a little bit of that with the great weather cards and with the storm card. And maybe we can have other cards which maybe alter the weather or change events that do weather like things. And I think I'd be for that because it is sort of interesting, right? There could be games where you're like, oh my God, man, really? We're going to slow this thing down because it's blistering hot and you have to fatigue if you, right? Or what if you do more than two moves, you have to fatigue or something like that, right? I'm sort of okay maybe doing that with a card event because I might like how that changes the game for a week. But yeah, I don't love the seasons and there's this gigantic chart and you're sitting there and going, okay, it's just almost too sweeping a change to use the giant seasons, and so I don't and it changes sort of the nature of the whole thing and I don't love it like that. So we try to get the spirit of that in there as well, and the same thing really with the auto enchants is I don't use them, but I try to capture them through the event. I try to capture just a little flavor of that in the event cards, right? You can draw a card. Oh, these tiles get to enchant now. Done. And then it's done. And then you've gotten that event. Something's happened. The board has changed. And you can move on as opposed to, the ones in there are man, every end of the week, then you do this thing, and then these things change, and a whole bunch of stuff. Instead, let's do 3 or 4 tiles and be done with it, and just move on. Um, Again, to that effect, another sort of weak. So, I mean, you've heard of casual Fridays. We have dangerous Fridays, or I call them dangerous day sevens. Is actually what dangerous day sevens, right? So, so the solo rules. So this is where this came from. So the solo rules have you rolling 2 dice for monsters everywhere, and I did that, and I tried that for a couple characters. And what I realized was it was a good way to immediately get stuck certain places. Now, I don't think it's a bad rule for the base game, especially. It's a fine rule. You get more monsters. You have to you're on your toes continuously. It's a more exciting game for sure playing solo because there's not as much on the board, not as much going on, and I do understand that. However, for the quest card game, I don't want to be stuck in the Lost Castle tile my entire 28 days because you can't get out because you can't not roll monsters because there's 6 chits on this thing and all of them are drawing monsters, maybe multiple times a day. Um, because this was literally because of the using the quest cards versus say in a normal game you're like the berserker or something and you can park yourself in one of those dangerous tiles rolling 2 dice every day and monsters just plowing into you and you are killing them. Bam, there's your 50, 60 fame done. That's great, but with the quest cards, that's going to give you 2 points max, and you are 8 points away from victory, and you have not left the lost castle tile in 10 days. So that's not really how I don't want that game to. I like the death hexes when they appear. It's sort of a fun story, and you go, "Oh my god, this is a mess," and that's fine. But at some point, I need my characters to become disengaged from those, and so I found that rolling 1 die for most days is good, and I like that even in a solo game, even though it makes for a slower game. Now, having said that, I thought, well, we could co-op this though for day sevens because it does 2 things. One thing is you get 4 players or 6 players. We've had 6 players around my table. We're playing 6 players, and we've cleared the damn thing out. Like the whole appearance chart is a vast desert of corpses. It's a mess. And so you go, well, I tell you what, we will res 2 rows every seventh day, and that will make things a little bit better, right? So I like that, and I think that's a better, a more interesting thing. You get more monsters, you keep more monsters cycling, and the other thing is for the quest cards, it also does a second thing, which is it does it's two well, it does a second thing. The second thing is it does make you think. Coming day 7, you might think, you know what I want to not do? Be in the Lost City or the Lost Castle pile. I want to back out of this thing for day 7. Now, is it a little bit weird and not and meta to be under going, hey, it's day 7, so monster out, whatever. You can theme it however you like. It's a blood moon, whatever it is. The fact of the matter is, you should be careful on day 7. If you're going to rest, day 7. If you're going to back to a dwelling and redo your cards or something, do it on day 7 because although you could get native, with unfriendly natives. The other thing it does is if you want something to show up, then you know that day 7's the day to go look for it. If you really need something to show up and you're having trouble getting that thing, I want goblins. Well, maybe I should go on day 7. It doubles the chance for the thing to be there. Oh, natives? I need the company to show up. You know where I should be on day 7? The inn or the large campfire. So it acts as more monsters, so it reses more monsters. It pulls more monsters to the board, and it makes me think about where do I want to be on day 7 very specifically. And if I'm looking for something, if I have a Dragon Slayer card and I have not had any luck finding dragons on the board, I know that on day 7 I can go to a smoke C or a smoke chit and wait this out, and maybe day 7 is going to get me what I need. So really think that's it. I mean, it's sort of I get it. It's not a super exciting video, and I don't know that I use really all that much or anything that interesting. And it really, this is all very personal preference, right? And a lot of the personal preference literally just comes down to, what makes the game more fun for me and what makes the game more fun given this goofy, wacky variant that I seem to be playing all the time. Um, and I think that's the list. I think enhanced artifacts though is a really interesting one to try. Only because I don't get a lot of great use out of spell books. I mean, half the time you find a spell book and you're like, well, that ain't me. It's a type 2. I'm a sorcerer. Oh, well, guess I'll sell it, or I guess I'll keep it for great treasure, but it ain't going to do me any good. Whereas here now, it opens up a whole nother set of spells to learn, and so on. So maybe the answer is you ought to consider, right? So that's my list. And that's it. Thank you very much. I'll talk to you all later. Bye bye.